change in the fundraising sector has never been greater. But innovations in technology are evolving faster than our ability to understand them. Are these advances good or bad? Do they have unintended consequences? And what is the application to the global fundraising sector? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to the Fundraising AI Podcast, your up-to-date resource for responsible AI for the global fundraising community, hosted by Nathan Chappell and Scott Rosenkrantz.
Hey everyone, we're back for another episode of the Fundraising AI Podcast. I'm Nathan Chappell here with Scott Rosenkrantz. Scott, why every time when we start a podcast, you just start smiling?
I just get excited. I like doing this.
Here's the show.
Yeah, we're here.
The show.
Hey everyone.
Although Scott and I regret not hitting record about 20 minutes ago when we were talking about the end of the human race and the role of parenting in the age of AI and all those other things. And we were actually not joking, that maybe we'll record a special episode called, like, I don't know, the back files or something like that.
Dark
and
episode.
Then put a warning, the dark episode, and tell people not to listen to it before bed or in front of their kids.
Yeah. It got a little rough.
I admitted that my friendship is probably not good for Scott's mental capabilities. So
I'm rethinking it.
You might want to just say, you know what? My therapist said I can only handle you in small doses.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a fun ride, but it's bound to end eventually, right?
Right. Well, I mean, on the positive side, so there's just a lot of stuff going on in AI and a lot of change. And that change brings up philosophical questions that require practical answers.
Mm-hmm.
And truly, I mean, I share this openly, not just in the dark files, but I share this openly with AI bringing tremendous amount of change and all this. It calls the question of, like, who am I and what am I here for and what happens when I die? And I just don't think there's ever been a more important time to understand what drives you, what your values are individually and corporately, and then evaluate your use of AI or any technology against those values. And so, I mean, I actually really mean that. And that's something that honestly, I do spend quite a bit of time thinking about those things. And you and and it was actually, I think it's helpful to talk about this part because you have a master's in psychology, and when things are changing or there's a sense of hopelessness or helplessness that, I mean, you can describe this better, obviously, of training in it, but a person has agency in how they respond to that. And now some people don't feel like they have agency. I don't know. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and we were actually talking about this when we were writing we first started writing the sequel to Generosity Crisis about learned helplessness, right? Learned helplessness is when you don't see that any of your choices make a difference, and so you just give up, right? And that can feel very overwhelming. I mean, we were talking about it in the book because of the generosity crisis and how every year after year people are have to do more with less, and like just keep doing the same thing. And so you're just kind of you're not willing to risk jumping to something new like an AI predictive tool or anything, but you're willing to just accept loss year after year, right? Just kind of giving up, throwing up my hands, just going to keep doing what I've been doing. But that comes into play here when we talk about, like, what does AGI bring? What does ASI bring? When is it going to happen? Is it going to be, like, all those philosophical questions? Is it going to be good or bad? And what role can I, as one individual, play in making sure it goes right?
Yeah. And that's, I think, something that humans inherently have to deal with most of their lives. So something bad happens and you either become the person that overcomes and you become stronger because you reflect on the situation and you actually take conscious decisions and actions to overcome that, or you become the victim of it. And I think that's where, no matter the result on anything with AI, the way I wake up every day thinking, well, you know what? I'm still here. I have a role to play. There are things that I worried about, and like, I made a monthly donation to the Center for Humane Technology on Giving Tuesday because I'm like, this is actually probably, I mean, I love FarmLink Project and they're my favorite charity, but I think the work that the Center for Humane Technology is doing right now to advocate for truly like a reform, an AI reform, is probably the most important effort that I could invest in and then talk about. And so, yeah, I think for me, and I was talking to someone in Canada a while, and he's like, you know what, even if all of this goes down and it doesn't go well, at least we used every every ounce of our energy and dying breath to speak our truth. And so I think that goes back to like understanding your values, and then hopefully not just succumbing to like, well, whatever's going to be, I'm helpless and I'm powerless, but to actually take your effort and your brain and do something about that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do like it is a balance, because it can, looking ahead, it can feel very overwhelming, right? That there are the largest companies in the world, right? And potentially the strongest country in the world, right? Are competing against each other with billions and billions of dollars to hit this thing that could not be good for everyone.
Right, right. And, I mean, you and I both listened to a couple of the same podcasts that were pretty lengthy this week. And a lot of that was brought up that, the arms race is real, that the potential for risk is real, and that the belief is that whoever is going to build AGI, artificial general intelligence, or ASI, artificial superintelligence, essentially, if potentially it has a bad outcome, each of the main players in that role are actually have convinced themselves, or their network around them has convinced them, like, well, if anyone's going to do it, it better be you or better be me, because you're better suited to bring this technology to life than the other person who would bring sheer, better not be Elon because it'll be sheer destruction. So it better be Sam. And so they've each convinced themselves that they're the only ones that are equipped. It reminded me, when I was listening to this, actually, a little bit of the benevolent dictator, and this was not the right words, but in Carnegie's Gospel of Wealth. The Gospel of Wealth is a book, actually an essay, basically, that Andrew Carnegie wrote, that really was the first edition of the Giving Pledge. It was literally this idea that whoever dies with money dies disgraced. And while that was really commendable and admirable, there are some thoughts in there that people that are ordained with wealth and power are actually ordained by God to actually be more special. And therefore, that was his rationale for like, well, you have to give away this money because actually you are a more powerful person. You are more, not just in like you've gained the power, but you are ordained to have this power. And so a little bit of that feels like what's going on here. And it's like all, these 5, 10, I don't know, really the concentration of power is insane right now. It's like literally like 5 people in the world that are really controlling the world, and none of us elected them.
Yeah.
And so, and they're just kind of playing God in a lot of these ways. It was something in one of the interviews, and I wonder what your thoughts were on this. So it actually helped me really understand this. With the challenge with a technology like AI that represents in equal proportions infinite possibility and equal doom, like infinite possibility and infinite doom, that the term being used, and I forget who I think it was a professor or psychologist, talked about this idea of cognitive dissonance, because essentially when our brains are literally not equipped to reconcile with things that have both infinite possibility and infinite doom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the example they gave was, I think it was in Tristan's episode. The example they gave is like someone might consider themselves healthy, but they smoke cigarettes. And then it's presented to them and they're like, yeah, but it doesn't really impact me. Like I'm fine, right? Like they just can't reconcile that in their head, like you said. So yeah, I think that's where like there is infinite possibility, right? And the difference between infinite possibility and potential for infinite doom is infinite possibility is right here and now, whereas infinite doom is
right
in the future, right? So at least
maybe, yeah, potentially, it could be, right?
If at all, it's not today, right? Whereas infinite possibility is a definite and is today, right?
Right.
So that's where like I
love that.
Although I tend to turn my mind off of like the infinite doom part of it, right? And just focus on like, what are all the things that I can be doing, right? To find more meaning in my work, find more meaning, have more time with my wife, my kids, and still get things done that need to get done. Like, just allow me to live a better life utilizing this technology and put the whole potential for doom off to the side and block that out.
Well, sounds like a nice counseling session you just had with yourself. So that's, you probably, I was curious, do you go to counseling after every time we speak? It's like I have to call someone. I apologize. That's
my other podcast.
Right. I don't know if I've always felt the ability to kind of live in both worlds and be okay with it. I don't know, maybe from a spiritual sense, there's some comfort there, but I think having overcome a lot as a child and growing up in poverty, it just provided me this, it was very entrenched that your well-being was a state of mind. It wasn't the circumstances around you. And not that I don't struggle, like when there's been really bad situations with, say, bad bosses or things that in my past, I'm like, this is doomed and this is the worst thing ever. It's taken me a while to come back to, you know what, there's actually things that I've learned from this. And I actually have improved as a human being from this to embrace those negative things. And part of that is kind of that orientation that, is the worst thing that could ever happen to you, could it potentially be the best thing that ever happened to you? And I don't know, I wake up with that Charlie Bucket sense of like anything is possible. And I love that about this time. I mean, it's a crazy fast-paced time and, but you and I are literally seeing technology unfold before our eyes in ways that are not, they're like science fiction. They're not anything that humanity has ever experienced. There's no framework for like understanding like this is where things are going because we've seen this before. There's none. I mean, the things that we didn't think were possible are entirely possible. And that means we need to absolutely change the way we think. And I thought it was just so appropriate this year. Someone was sharing with me the other day that the color of the year, do you know there's a Pantone color of the year?
Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know what year is?
I vaguely saw some posts about it, but talk about it.
Oh, okay. Well, someone shared this with me the other day, and I thought it was so appropriate. So the Pantone color of the year is Snow Dancer, and it's basically white. And I'm like, how amazing is that? Because if I think about 2026, and I'm working on my strategic planning at Virtuous right now for what I need to achieve and, what I want to achieve and how I want to achieve it. And I titled my document, Anything is Possible, 2026, Anything is Possible. In fact, I put all my metrics and my efforts into ChatGPT. It's like, I did this many things, I flew this much and whatever. And I said, for 2026, I want you to not think about any of that. I don't want any of those same ideas. And I also want to travel 20% less for the same reasons that you were just mentioning, like spend more time with family and for me with my chickens and all that. And in this sense of anything is possible, guess what? Like of 20 ideas, 16 were like absolutely worth exploring and kind of looking into. And I'm like, dang, I never even thought about that. Like, how do I scale my impact? And if I hadn't stepped back without that notion of like anything is possible, I would have probably just done exactly the same thing I've done every other year.
Yeah. Yeah. And tying into that, I think, I was reading an article about how people are using AI, and we have seen not just technology change, but the adoption change, right? And the stickiness change. And one thing that I thought was interesting, making it a little bit more like tangible in terms of usage, is early adopters of technology, like people that are just getting started, they'll, especially with agents, as we're seeing, we've been talking about agents for a while, and I know we're going to be talking about 2026 and agents, I think, obviously going to be a big thing. But Perplexity put out this study with Harvard on how people are using agents, right? Did you see this?
No.
And a lot of people are using it, but the difference between those who are using it and the stickiness is when they shift from using it as like a task versus like cognitive partner, right? And so that's why I love that example. You'd shared that with me previously, but like, you're not just saying, hey, do this thing for me, but like, help me think out of my own perspective, like out of the box from where I can sit from where I'm sitting right now. Like, how would you do this differently? What can I do differently? And how can I adopt that?
Yeah. I think it's the acknowledgement and finally succumbing to this idea that we are just infinitely stupid compared to the world's information. Yeah. Right. I mean, we can pretend, we're intelligent and we've got all these lived experience and all of that. But compared to not only every human that's alive today, but every human that's ever been alive since the beginning of time, essentially, when things have been written down, we're like infinitely dumb. We don't have perfect recall. Our ability to understand scope of circumstances around us is so small. Like one piece of sand in the entire planet of sand in beaches in the entire world. And so if you succumb to that and you're like, look, there's like, I'm not even like scratching the surface. There's just like an entirely different way and orientation that I can think about things. That's where I think I get really hopeful and optimistic. So as we talk about 2025, And then we talk about 2026. I'll just skip to that, is that I really hope that 2026 is the year where nonprofit organizations start looking at problems in entirely different ways, not just trying to accelerate the work they're already doing, but literally question what they're doing from the very beginning.
And I think using AI as a partner, not just in execution, but in ideation, right? Like the whole, I mean, we talked about this last time, Kaz McGrath did that exercise of how would I create a $1 billion nonprofit with a staff of 10, right? Any for-profit company that's coming out in today is leveraging AI to the fullest extent, right?
Yeah.
We have to think differently as well. We have to think, how would a competing organization focused on the same exact mission start today? Start with the tools that are available and not just throw a little bit on here to send emails out faster.
Right. Yeah. So what are you seeing? So in 2025, I mean, you and I have been on the AI journey for quite a while, obviously, and we've seen a lot of iterations of this from all the way back in 2018, 2019, where it's like, oh, it's not private, it's not secure, then it's not ethical. And then it's like, oh, the environment. And then it was really about the early adopters, like the early adopters that were a little bit more tolerant of risk, but they also had more money because AI was not cheap, not accessible. So we start 2025, and I'll be curious to hear, your perspectives on this as well, because for me, it went from the early adopters were the ones that were the big organizations. What I saw this year is that, in talking with a lot of nonprofit professionals, is that the ones at the big organizations actually took a step back. They actually started using less AI because AI became really bureaucratic and territorial. And from a legal perspective and from a technical perspective, who owns it, which department, what are you allowed to do? And then I saw a bunch of small, scrappy nonprofits in early 2025, especially when all the executive orders hit and all those challenges and headwinds started facing the nonprofit sector. It was like, holy crap, like we need to dig in and dive deep and do something. And I think the pain became great enough where it was like, what else can we do? Either I have to pay a consultant to help me think out of the box and or use AI to get me through this and through all of those challenges.
Yeah, definitely that. I think also it's funny you mentioned about the privacy, security concerns, and the environmental concerns. I forgot that was a period of time, right? Like, when was the last time you heard somebody say, well, what about environmental concerns, right?
Oh, today. Oh. Actually, I hear that all the time.
I feel like I don't hear
privacy,
that
security, and ethics. No, in hallucinations, we could throw that in there too, because we hear hallucinations a lot. It's like, oh, the hallucinations. All of those to me are essentially reasons when we look at change management and how people like or don't like change. Only 20% of people like change, 50% of people sit on the sidelines, and 30% of the people actually work against it. Whenever I hear barriers of any of those, for me, they're all bucketed the same way. It's like, I don't like change. And I think it was on one of the podcasts we listened to. It wasn't that people are afraid of change. They're afraid of being changed. And I thought that was so insightful. So I hear much less on oh, is it ethical? Is it authentic? Even hallucinations. But I hear the environment one a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought that was going away. I feel like the ethical one is still, that's such a hard question to answer, right? And so it's an easy question to ask if you want a distraction from not having to use AI, right? Whereas
I think all of them are based on which is the most convenient barrier for you.
Right. That's a tough one, especially for the nonprofit sector, because there are organizations that are fighting against negative environmental impact, right? But then using the tool that has been shown to have negative, it's cognitive dissonance all over again, right? How do I use this if it goes against everything that I'm working for?
But it's math, right? It's a balance of reward and cost.
Yeah.
And so, I've done quite a few sessions and workshops for environmental organizations. And it's interesting, they're less concerned with it than people on the outside, because they're like, well, we're already used to reconciling with this. We all use it. We would never consider not using the internet or producing streaming videos or whatever it might be,
driving a car.
It would be impossible to amplify our work or achieve our work if we didn't do that. And so I think in some ways, environmental organizations are already very used to reconciling with that. And they're also really in tune with other ways to offset your carbon footprint. And so they're like, you have agency in this in lots of different ways. Whereas I literally got it earlier today. I was doing a webinar and it's like, well, what about the environmental impact? I was like, I'd be shocked if somebody didn't bring that up. And And it's frankly, I think a lot of it is because there's just such exaggeration in the news on what the environmental impact is. And not to say that it is not. And I can remind people that my grandfather was a PhD geologist who wrote a book about the environment in 1971. And it was called Crisis by Consent. Essentially, people, his biggest concern for humanity was people not caring. And so this is very personal for me. And I was raised with this idea of like, you never would walk out of a room without turning the light off. And you would never leave the water on for more than like as soon as you washed all the soap off your hands. But I think we still deal with some of those challenges. But I think we've learned to like, look, the reality is not going to slow down the exponential pace of this technology. And in 2025, I saw a lot of organizations come along and start doing like really creative things. And I think it went from like specific use cases and fringe use cases.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have seen a lot of this, like little small, like doing either good or bad work faster to, in fact, Dan Kershaw just wrote an article. I don't know if you saw it on Medium the other day, talking about one of his employees who woke up at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m, who she started rethinking everything that she does for work and was wondering like, how can AI help do these things? Yeah. And so from like fringe use case to like systemic change, I think is where I'm finding us kind of at the end of 2025 for a lot of organizations.
Yeah. Another challenge that I'm seeing, like going out there and talking to people, what they're posing is how do you keep it like the authentic voice, right? Which I think, that's a legitimate question, right? And I would assume that shows that they are using it and know that it can come back very inauthentic, right? And so I'm not going to use it because it's not authentic, but how do I craft it in a way that keeps my voice and my thought process and not just AI slop?
I think that's a really good point because I even remember, well, it was, I think my first LinkedIn post after post GPT. So when GPT was released, is sounding authentic the same as being authentic? Because I was really wrestling with that. And my GPT after 3 years is so tuned to my voice and my voice is tuned to it. So there is acknowledgement that this is a melding. Like actually there's lots of studies that show that the way people are speaking, even using the word vibe, is different than it has. And so cultures shift with any type of technology. But I do think that those that have really invested in learning how to use a tool well and to train it and to continue to feed it and correct it and use it as a co-collaborator can overcome that feeling of it's not authentic or it's cheating. There's a lot of that sediment too, that is just cheating.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think being able to, you always talk about being creative and ask the questions, like that is a limiting factor, right? Not being able to ask those questions, but also getting the information from your head into AI. Like if I just went in and created a new account with, a tool I'm not using that often and say, hey, how do I do my job better? It's going to have no freaking clue. Right. So like it has to know you. You have to be slowly feeding it or figure out a way to just get a massive brain dump so it knows a holistic view of you, at least in your professional life, if not your personal life, to give that advice to you, right? And that is often through repeatable behavior. And so it's like pushing through the, can't think of a word, sludge of maybe not getting the outputs you want, but like pushing through to know that on the other side of this, you are going to find that sweet spot.
Yeah. So maybe we wrap 2025 up with this idea that we're going from probably more skepticism of whether or not this is going to last. It's like, okay, it's here to stay. So there's been, I think, a pretty strong acknowledgement in 2025. It's like, okay, it's here, damn it. And we're going to be stuck with it. And maybe with that came a little bit more curiosity. Now, I will say you and I have found when we've done our own studies on this, that adoption is very, very high, like 80, 85% people are using it, but 95% of that is being used as what we consider kind of shadow or passive AI. It's not strategic. It's not transforming the way you approach your work. It's just enhancing your work in small amounts. So I do think that needle probably didn't, I think we have more mental acceptance of this not going away and it's changed everything, but not a full recognition that for really the ability to transform the way we work, the way we support our organizations, the way we support our own professional development, that we have to go much deeper than that. And I think we're still kind of in that very small number, 5% of organizations are really at that point right now.
Yeah, and I think going back to Perplexity, it's shifting from I'm using it for a task versus I'm using it for a cognitive partner, right? They even
Yeah.
said they mirrored this is how it was in the early days of the computer. The computer was being sold as you could store all your recipes in here, right? Like just a,
Mhm.
a massive information compiling. And then spreadsheets came out. And spreadsheets weren't really a thing in the analog world the same because you can't use it the same way. And so using the tool differently, not just to replicate something you're doing elsewhere, but to break that mold and try something completely new. That is where that shift comes from. So I think
Yeah.
like we're starting to see that, and we're going to see more of that in 2026, right?
I hope
I
so.
hope so.
Yeah. So 2026. All right. We put our crystal ball, in front of us, and we both acknowledge that one, I think it actually GPT proved, well, even COVID proved this to us. Like, I think people are really bad at predicting things. But when ChatGPT came out, very few, and even those people who built ChatGPT and those that are very close, like Ilya Sutskever did that interview. I don't know if you watched it, where he was very chatty. I think we talked about it on the last podcast. I mean, we are really bad at predicting things. So 3 years, 5 years, like anything can happen. The world is very complex. It moves very fast. But if we can, you and I, in like our reality seats, we're sitting here as humans today in front of actual desks, and we're not avatars. If we want to bet on where we're going to be on December 11th, what we're going to be talking about December 11th of 2026, what are those observations going to be?
I think that we're going to be talking about agents not as a single thing, right? Not like I have an agent or I'm working with agents, right? But we're going to treat them similar to how like AI has evolved from predictive and now generative. Like we talk about generative differently than we do talk about predictive because there are two different tools. I think agent is going to be the term itself is going to be so commonplace that it's going to be, well, I'm talking about this agent versus that. Like we're going to talk to them as if we talk about colleagues or partners, right? And they are a more commonplace in our world, definitely our professional world, right? That this is something that we're leaning on heavily.
Yeah, I think to just reframe that a different way, I totally agree that our definition of what AI is in December 11th of 2026 is going to be very different than what our definition of AI is today. So I think we'll look back and see that our definition of AI today was such a limiting technology that was just cute, and it can do like impressive things on its occasionally in isolation of itself. And I think what you're saying, and I totally agree, it's like when agents are basically stringing lots of complex things together seamlessly through literally speech or any kind of like cognitive download, that we'll look back a year from now and be like, I can't believe we even thought that was AI.
But I think that that's going to be a common December 11th of every subsequent year, right? The definition is going to change. Like if we look back at this time last year,
Yeah.
video wasn't what it is now, right? Audio was like the cool thing, right? Like you could create the song, you
Hmm.
could create apps, right? And now you
Right.
can create apps like in minutes, right? So I
Yeah.
think the capabilities are going to continually like it was not like that from 2018 to 2020, the first,
Right.
10 months of the year of 2020. Like AI was basically the one thing, right? Predictive AI. When we talk about
Right.
AI, it was basically the same as it was, 2 years prior. We're not in that period anymore, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's still where I think it's going to, yes, I think we are going to define AI differently. I think we're going to see it differently. I think it's going to cause more confusion for those that are on the periphery because now it's not just predictive and generative, but it's agentic, right? And so I'm going to not I'm going to, but there are going to be people who hear agent and think ChatGPT, right? See generative AI and think that it can make predictions. Like it's going to get so convoluted because now it is even more than it was the previous year.
No, it really is. I think if people are still thinking in those limited ways of like, I can use AI to write a prompt to, do something, limited, as I'm talking in real, thinking about this in real time, a year from now, I think there'll be a much, much faster, greater separation from those that do and those that don't. Because you're talking about vibe coding, so just literally coding apps, prototypes, websites, deploying those things like effortlessly in your pajamas, with your first cup of coffee in the morning. There'll be a plethora of those. There's going to be so much more content. There'll be so many more apps and ways of like doing things that will be overwhelming. But those that really lean in are going to outperform by far. Like it goes from everything personal to everything professional. I mean, even with the release of GPT 5.2 today, which has already had agents built in, but now has improved agents, it's not going to be, oh, okay, well, right now the barrier is like, oh, I've got to pay $20 a month for this, which only, I think, what is it, like 5% of people pay for ChatGPT. So I'm going to pay $20 for this, and then I got to pay $20 for NAN or some other vibe coding tool. I don't want to do that. But if Gemini 3 could do it, I'm already paying for that, or my company's paying for it, or ChatGPT can do that, and it's already paying for that. Like, oh, wait, just a minute here. Like, and maybe I can actually do these things. I'm going to just test this out a little bit. So I do think the delta between those that do and those that don't will be much greater by the end of next year, that separation. I don't think that we're going to do away with predictive AI just yet, but I think that's an 18-month runway. Like, I actually think that like predictive, like AI ML as we know it, in 18 months looks really different than it does today, because a lot of that data will be consumed. Dashboards will be built by agents to say, this is what your data is doing, still using first and third party data. Here's what's going on. Here's your drift. Here's some analysis. And by the way, here's some recommendations. Oh, wait, I actually made these changes and I reprioritized these. If you want me to, you're following me, but basically, like, if you want to adjust precision and recall because you want to be right more often or less, or wrong more often, it's your call. What are you trying to achieve? And all that predictive AI ML is going to be done through Vibe. And Vibe coding will be just the confluence. You and I, we predicted this 3 years ago when we were at OpenAI.
Yeah.
We knew for a fact, because we actually met like a 26-year-old who was building predictive AI into ChatGPT a couple of years ago. I think we're like 18 months away. I could be wrong. Actually, it could be in 2026.
You saying that makes me think of what we've been doing the last 8 years and how much work has been required to build what we built. Right.
Yeah, it's insane.
And then
right?
you just flip a switch and I want to build a new
and you
predictive
just
model,
have a
test it
predictive
out.
AI that not only does that, but then takes specific action on every single prediction, right? And then builds a video, builds a letter, whatever that's completely customized from that prediction. That's not this. I mean, I think, I think your color turned a little red because, it's not remotely hard. Like, this is like, we're really, really close to that. So it's like, whether it's 12 months or 18 months, I think we're at the cusp of that. But think about in 2018, if you remember the math that was behind the first algorithm, I mean, it was literally just code.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely bonkers. Like, it was literally like, I think it was 10,000 lines of code with basically like an algorithm. And in that code,
I think I have a printout and a binder in my office.
Maybe you should, with like lots of like features, meaning variables and weightings to those things. It was just not accessible, not easy. And then we got to a point where, we could use software like Data Robot and be like, oh, well, we can manipulate a model. We can isolate and find, bias, and we can find redundancies, and we can manipulate and adjust the threshold so it could be right more often or less more often, or wrong more often than what we're looking for. So
Still
we're pretty close. I don't want to lose
of
people on the technical side here, but it was like crazy, and still is a little bit, but we're not far off at all.
Not far off at all. And I think what that's going to do, because it always has been predictive versus generative, right? Like, they are two distinct tools. You cannot access them the same way. You cannot have ChatGPT make predictions on who is going to do something in the future. It'll sound very convincing and it'll tell you that it can do that, but it is not doing that, right?
Right.
I think it's going to be the blend of, to what you're saying, predictive being created by generative, and then generative being built off of the predictions, and then the prescriptive on what do we do now, and the agents doing that. Like, it is going to be a machine that just like its own ecosystem.
Yeah. Now, so that's on the technical side. From a societal perspective, from a macro perspective, I mean, there's some things that worry me about AI unregulated. Now, Australia, we were going to talk about this anyway. Australia took a huge swing on this week. I was traveling in New York and it was on in a taxi and it was just like replaying that they're the first country to basically outlaw AI or social media for any teenager. And I think it was 16 and below, right? So no company, so not parents and kids aren't going to jail if they use social media, but companies, including, and I think, well, all of them have already agreed that they're Meta and TikTok and others have already had to agree that they shut down like 1 billion accounts or something in one day, and that they have to use age authentication, verification. So in absence of all of that, because we know kind of the AI arms race, I honestly see that by the end of next year, almost a backlash and a hate for AI. And I'm already like, I think of one thing is my superpower is like connecting dots and hearing, like, I can hear like chatter, like in the way like the old Soviets would like, or the spies would like listen to the radio and I could like put things together. Is that I believe that the chatter will grow very loud and that there'll be such a dislike of all things AI because it just represents everything synthetic and fake. And with that, I think the cultural reaction is going to be to arts and to like almost a renaissance of craft and what is true and real. Like I'm kind of excited about that, to be honest. It's not going to slow the progress. The progress is going to stay the same because the technology is exponential and the financial incentives are so strong. But societally, I think we are going to have a new appreciation by the end, December 11th of next year, a new appreciation for what's true and authentic and real. And that's with people looking at people, you know, having dinner with others, having conversations and playing games, doing crafts or whatever it might be.
So you and I are both active on LinkedIn, right? Like that's the only social media platform I use. How do you see that changing between now with authenticity and with knowing that it's going to be so easy to create content that anybody's going to be doing it, right?
Yeah, I think that is the straw that will break the camel's back. Because at this point, whatever percentage, and I think we talked about this on the last podcast, like the percentage of websites being created that are all synthetic and blah, 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 all that stuff. If you go on, and honestly, I have this like, you know how much I hate Meta, really, like the most irresponsible company, but I love Marketplace because I want to like buy cheap tractor equipment in my local town. And if I, heaven forbid, end up getting off a Marketplace and getting onto something, recognizing that X percentage of it is totally fake. Like it's meant to look real, whatever. And I don't think watermarks help with that. I heard yesterday that I literally would pay for this. I don't know how much, but if there was a 100% authentic social media platform, like it's verified authentic, verified human, that literally figures out how to ban anything synthetic and manipulative and whatever. And I would be 100%. So I actually do think, and someone told me that somebody who had, I forget who it was, it made sense when they said it was someone who had left Facebook or someone that an ex Twitter person, I think it might have been Dorsey. Yeah, it was Dorsey that who had, the creator of Twitter, right, and sold it, is actually working on this exact platform.
Recreating
and so,
Twitter. Right?
Right. Yeah. But a true, like verified, authentic, a verified human version. And so, you know, I could absolutely see by the end of next year that there is just this massive backlash. Now, the problem is that, and Tristan Harris talks about this a lot, is like every swipe on Facebook is like insight into your brainstem because you've got the supercomputer on the backside that's like serving an algorithm at light speed based on any intonation of like, I paused, I watched, I liked, my friends have liked, and it's like, and so the risk of it is just that you get in there and it's like pulling the lever on the slot machine and your brain is just like, oh yeah, what's next? And then you're, 3 hours later, you're watching cat videos. And so I think that will be hard to break, but I do think there's going to be a lot of backlash on the synthetic because it's just become absurd and everyone knows that it's just fake and not real and not healthy. So,
and we're still in the very early stages of it, right? Like it's only going to get worse from here.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm worried about LinkedIn. I mean, you brought up LinkedIn because my feed on any given day, I'm like, I get LinkedIn posts from LinkedIn saying, stop the scroll, use video. And they're trying to get businesses to all use video because that's where they show that you have longer engagement. And I've already seen a lot of people starting to use LinkedIn wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, look what, I had this dream about this thing last night and whatever. And it's just like nonsense, but they're trying to beat the algorithm. The algorithm's rewarding that. And I worry about that because I love LinkedIn and I've been on LinkedIn literally since it started and really bet on it. And it's my most valuable network. But I do get worried if it starts just being TikTok, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that's where it's going. Right.
It's kind of obnoxious.
Yeah. Where do you, because you have a better finger on the pulse of quantum. Where do you see that playing a role next year?
I mean, so I'm still betting on 2028 for quantum. I mean, everything that I'm still reading is that even though this year, I think we're until 2025. Yeah. So 2025 was the year of quantum, according to the UN. 2028 is there was a really, really, really big advance in quantum this year with Microsoft, but it's whether or not that's replicable and improvable and scalable. Yeah, I mean, that brings up like we could just go totally dark, totally fast, because if quantum breaks through in the way that they think it will open up new possibilities of physics and, I mean, from, string theory and dark matter and all those things, that the greatest promises and the greatest answers to all things that have ever been asked will be answered. And that's, weirdly related to AI, but not. Like they're happening at the same time. So that's where it's like no one's really equating ASI, artificial superintelligence, with the need of quantum. Like it's kind of weird, right? They're like completely two different isolated things, yet you could see a path going down this really fast, like light speed train or whatever, going down and building this path of ASI with like regular technology.
Yeah.
And then ultimately someone's gonna be like, well, okay, that's great. Then we did it, high fives for AGI. And actually when we hit AGI, it's somewhere between 3 years, 10 years, 15 years that people are saying, well, it's going to take forever and ASI might be impossible. But you pour some quantum gasoline on there and it's like, it just happens instantly. And at that point, so that
all
part,
predictions become irrelevant.
Yeah. And yeah, so way to end it on a dark note. So quantum is still alive and well and making some really incredible promises. And so I think that's where this stuff really would get interesting. I remember talking about quantum in like 2017 and people thought I was like a complete moron. I'm like it will converge, but they've been on these two separate tracks and those tracks will obviously need to merge to achieve what they want to achieve. It's not just bigger, faster computers. The quantum computer, by all intents and purposes, is not a computer. I mean, it's a completely different way of actually, operating.
It's kind of like how, I mean, in very simplistic comparison, big data and computing technology were two separate tracks, but then once they hit that convening point, like that's where predictive AI blew up.
No, that's a great analogy because the idea for a long time actually was that big data was actually not valuable. It was just like, we need data, everybody needs data, but there was not a belief. It wasn't really until, transformer technology. And I mean, Jeffrey Hinton is the one that really connected the dots of like, well, if like you had enough data and enough examples of something that it actually can be somewhat predictable. And so, those two things were on these tracks. I mean, to your point, work in AI was started in 1955 and it was on a track just to like do really good math. But there was there was such dismissal that big data was the answer. And in fact, they thought it actually was going to hinder its ability. And it wasn't like Fei-Fei Li and Jeffrey Hinton really broke through that whole aspect that big data actually became really the idea of being able to build the neural networks that drive kind of modern generative AI.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well,
I don't know. There's some other things that we were going to talk about, like data centers in space. So that the environmental context, we've been saying this for a while. It's like, well, don't worry about it too long because data centers are moving in space. And NVIDIA just backed StarCloud. And StarCloud is basically sending satellites in space with NVIDIA. I think they put one of their big chips, actually. I think it's the biggest chip that they have. They actually put into space. And so AI being obviously the benefit of space for people that don't know in low orbit, is that you don't need water or cooling because it's very cold. ChatGPT 5.2 was released today, which is another big breakthrough. It's showing really positive signs of outperforming certain things in Gemini. But it's, it's such a close arms race. It's go with the thing that works best for you.
Right. And that knows you the best.
Yeah. And then the last one was, I thought, just fascinating deal. And you pointed the nuance here out, is that Disney struck a $1 billion deal with OpenAI, but Disney's paying OpenAI for use of all of their models. So this goes back, I think we talked about it on the podcast where like OpenAI has already proven that they could build a full feature length animated movie, which will be coming out in spring for like, I think it was a 40th of the cost and like 100th of the time or something like that. And obviously that's why it'd be very appealing to Disney, probably piss off every actor on the planet. But it also now gives, and I think this is what's bonkers about it, it gives OpenAI users like you and I ability to use Disney characters in video and other things. So I think according to the press release from OpenAI and Disney, I could build a video with Mickey Mouse in it, or Iron Man fighting Mickey Mouse.
Right. Darth Vader. Like the Disney universe is massive. And now it's all accessible to anybody paying $20 a month.
I mean, just to see what people create is going to be like, get the popcorn. I think it's going to be hilarious. But it probably goes more to that whole synthetic side of like, we're going to be able to be like, yes, that's entertainment. And it's just absolutely bananas. I think we'll look back at the end of the year. It's like, okay, but you know what? That's interesting to look at, but I'm going to play some board games with some friends.
Right. Yeah. I think the interesting thing about that is because the whole article is basically about, or the headline is about how OpenAI benefits from this $1 billion access to this massive universe. And then at the end, it's just additionally, Disney staff will use OpenAI's tools to create new products. Like that's the long game.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And they sent a cease and desist to Google already, letting them know that I guess they infringe a lot of copyright things. So they're basically suing them from Google doing any of this stuff. So another week of bananas AI stuff, not to be confused with nano bananas, which also is impressive.
It's out there in the world.
Right, it's there. Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for going on this windy journey of 2025, 2026. I think you and I are getting more and more comfortable elevating the conversation rather than just being like tools and, whatever kind of things that, people are using every day, but really talking about some of the bigger issues. So it may not be for everyone, but for those that enjoy this conversation, let us know, keep comments coming, and we'll keep doing it.
Yeah. Look forward to talking to you all in 2026.
All right. Thanks, everyone.